Welcome one and all to another exciting edition of Transformers Reviews. Well guys, this is a figure that I've kind of been looking forward to.
Devcon, the Bounty Hunter. Let's get out of here before he comes back to finish us off.
Although there are some things about Devcon here that we're going to have to get into that I really don't like, but the majority of this figure, he's actually pretty good. So a little bit of a history here on Devcon is that he's kind of gained a little bit of popularity here in the last few years. But the thing about Devcon is I actually knew him from his comic turn when he was one of the Wreckers back in the early 2000s. See, I didn't see the episode with him in it until years after that. So my first taste was our boy being a Wrecker, first as a recolor of one of my favorite Vehicons, Mirage, and then he ends up turning up in his old body, which, as you can see here in this picture, his alt mode doesn't quite match what it did in the cartoon. So coming back to the figure, if you guys are looking at that and going, well, what have you done to this guy? That's not how I've seen him look in the promotional photos. You're absolutely right. Because what I did is I've actually put a pair of additional seeker wings on our boy, because while the way that Mark designed it is animation accurate, I am not a fan of how that looks. We'll come back to that a little bit here in a second, because as you can see right now, our boy has those wings a little bit farther back on his alt mode. Or if you wanted to have him where the wings are a little bit at an angle, you can also plug in the arms where they're supposed to go in general, which at that point does make the official wings on this thing turn into more like full stabilizer fins. But if you want to have this guy with maybe even the wings a little bit farther forward, you can also do that too. So the fact that these additional wings that I've put on him, I really think it's ultimately in the service of trying to make him match his other official release, which was a Botcon figure, which itself was a rework of the Scourge mold. And so I think that I've just kind of been spoiled to the fact that, like we saw in the comic, and like I've seen with this figure, is that I like my boy whenever, well, you know, in general, guys, if you've paid attention to my channel, I love winged figures. So I think that this boy needed that, and I really felt that they should have done this guy from G-Axis's mold, and it would have been perfect. Our boy would have been Voyager size, and oh man. Because this figure's biggest problem is, ironically, the wings that I was talking about. I said we'd come back to that. Because here in vehicle mode, they're mostly obscured and they obviously are not big enough. Yet, by some weird magic, when you go to robot mode, they are egregious and too big at that point. And it takes certain poses to hide the wings, and I'm like, oh, come on. But this figure, oh man, it is not winning me over in vehicle mode until I put the wings on him. So with that being said, let's kind of go ahead and see what our boy has to show us in his robot mode. Well, our boy's vehicle mode may be
highly dubious,
but his robot mode, let me tell you this, oh, he is starting to kill it, even with those Patheto wings messing things up again. Because look at his boosters. They can actually make a rocket pack.
It's the Flying Man.
It's the Rocketeer.
The fact that you can do a comic accurate and or cartoon blaster, that is really cool. I mean, just look at this guy. He's so clean and crisp, and I mean, this figure looks like he's ready for some action. And the fact that in the comics and, you know, in the show, he was a bounty hunter or an Imperial Peace Marshall. I mean, this dude totally suits that vibe, and oh man, he looks so sick. Now, one of the other places that they suggest you using these little boosters are on his legs so that he can actually be flying via his feet, which, okay, I'm not totally opposed to that. It actually does kind of look cool down there on his legs. Now, with this guy being an Evo figure, you know what that means is basically that his weapons have multiple assault mode configurations, and I am definitely down with that. I love these as giant arm blasters. And one of the other features that they document is him having these two blasters up here. But if you want our boy to have a giant booming blaster with 3 barrels and just overkilling it, yeah, our boy is definitely rocking the look.
the Decepticons must be stopped at all costs.
And what a dramatic improvement this boy has received. Now, you know, in vehicle mode, you could kind of tell the general shape of their vehicle modes and how they were similar. And there's a little bit of that here in robot mode, but it's minimal at best. And you wouldn't be able to tell these guys were sculpted from the same figure just by looking at it. And man, I tell you what, like I said, Devcon is one of my favorite boys. So for him to actually just have any representation in plastic, that's one thing that I'm very glad about. Now, if you notice throughout this deal, I've kind of been ignoring the wings. So, but I mean, when you really start to look at it in some angles, they do become egregious, and I mean, it's just, maybe it's just a me thing. If you can live with it, I'm actually glad you can. However, with that being said, we do need to go ahead and move on to probably our last two comparisons. Now, for years, my only realistic, legit interpretation of Devcon was the Botcon reuse of the Generations Scourge mold. However, now stacked up to his new Legacy Evo figure, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, guys. Clearly, as they always seem to do, they always put out a much better version. And again, I'm just glad that our boy has got some little bit of presentation in plastic form. However, the Autobot that he's most known well for with hanging out would be Smokescreen. And even as much as I would like him to have been made from perhaps the G-Axis mold, the fact is him and Smokescreen were about the same size in the show, and I'm actually okay with that because, I mean, obviously, as we've seen, the boy is really awesome looking. So guys, I don't want to just keep repeating myself because obviously this guy is looking really cool, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Devcon. However, if I may go ahead and plug, guys, we are going to be doing a Beachcomber's video next. This is a guy I've really been looking forward to have back in the collection. Also, if you guys have not seen, we did a top 6 summer picks of this year because I wanted to go ahead and do one of those videos before we got to the end of the year because those are always kind of fun and interesting. And it will be kind of cool to see if any of those boys survive on that list or if they get totally kicked off of it. Like I just noticed today that my Armada Megatron is on his way apparently. And I've got like the Studio Series Snarl coming. So I mean, there's a lot of boys that they could potentially supersede that list that I showed in my last video. However, guys, I hope you enjoyed our look at Legacy Evo Devcon. And until next time, guys, we'll see you in another review.